Yeah, no, Sonny's going to be our next billionaire.
Oh, watch
the quality range. All right, so it looks like we're streaming now. How's everybody going?
Groovy.
Good, thanks.
All right, so one of my biggest frustrations is the way my wife overcompensates for my children. So I thought what we'll do today is we'll have a discussion about children and adults and what adults are teaching the children about money. Now, I know, Paul, you've got children, Sally's got children, and I've got children. And we're all at different stages in our lives. My children are 10 and 11. Sally, yours are going through HSC right now.
And so Paul, 17, 19, and 21, yeah. And how about you, Paul?
And Paul, yours are?
Yeah, older. So my youngest is 24.
24. Okay, right. So, and what actually prompted me to speak about this is that one of the sports I love watching is Formula One. And there's this one boy in one of the teams, and his father is a billionaire. So his father's funded him all the way through his career. He got him into Formula One. Now, Formula One is an expensive sport at the best of times, right? So he's funded his son to get all the way in. Last year, he, as a teammate, then he bought his son his own Formula One team, and he's built a whole factory. Like, I must have spent billions of dollars just in his son's upbringing and with regards to his Formula. Now, his son has shown glimpses of having some success. Last year, his teammate was a 4-time world champion, and he kind of held his own with him. But this year, they've changed teammates, and the current teammate is one of the most ruthless drivers that's ever been around in the sport. And he's putting his son to shame. And it's interesting to see how his son's, you can run, but you can't hide. In Formula One, you just can't hide. And just seeing the mindset of how the son's been so utterly dominated by this other driver has been very interesting to observe. And it got me thinking. And I'll give you an example, right? So this driver's name is Stroll, Lawrence Stroll, and his father, I said, is a billionaire. He built a go-karting track when he was younger. And the go-karting track is a 15-minute walk.
Whoa. Yeah, whoa.
Guess what? He called a helicopter to there.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
Right. So what's becoming very evident is that in my view, the father has not given the son enough abilities to be able to handle the pressure of being in a Formula One team and going up against an ex-world champion. So I thought, let's see what you guys have to say about this, Sally.
Well, I think it's a very entitled generation, to be perfectly fair. And the way that we bring up our kids is very, probably, I'm speaking for myself, but I think for the masses as well, very different to the way that we were brought up. We were brought up to be seen and not heard. Respect was top of there. We never called friends, our friends' parents by their first name. It was always Mr. or Mrs. I don't know if you were brought up that way, Paul. So just there's different, these days, kids, I think it's a better way to have a better communication and connection with them, but at the same time, they're quite entitled, and we have this whole cotton wool sort of environment where we don't want our kids to get hurt. We're hovering over them. There's the helicopter parents and that sort of thing. So it's a catch-22 in the sense that we're trying to protect our kids, but at the same time, we're trying to overindulge them with the things that we weren't given. Find that a lot. And the end result of that is that we have quite entitled children, and you have to go against the grain to not entitle them, so to speak. Like my kids now, as I said before, they're 17 to 20, nearly 22. So the ones that have left school and are earning their own money and paying for their own things, they're actually letting it all sink in now. Before that, until they had to pay out of their own pocket, they were just living under that ideology that money grows on trees, and no idea where money comes from. You see your parents working hard, but it's just like, yeah, but you can pay for that. I mean, my kids are quite entitled because of their situation, I suppose. But at the same time, I do see kids who have the same socioeconomic background, and they do more things, like they take the bins out and stuff. And it is, yes, it's about parenting, but also it's hard in my situation where it's split parenting, where you are trying to instill some values and the other parent doesn't. You'll find a lot in split parents that it becomes, there's a Disneyland parent. There's always I think generally in any parenting, there's a good parent and a bad parent, like the good cop, bad cop, one who says, now come on, it's time for a bath, come on, time to clean your teeth. There's always one that's on that. And then they're the sort of the bad cop, whereas the good cop is, oh, you've got another 5 minutes, you can stay up, let's go down to the shop, don't tell your mum or don't tell your dad, we're going to get an ice cream or something. So there's that sense of where it's incongruence between the good and the bad, so to speak, or the perceived good person and bad person. But there is this whole entitlement environment or medium that kids are living in, and expectations as well. So I do believe once they start paying for things themselves, they've got more of an idea. So like my kids now understand the cost of living of paying for petrol, because they have to pay for that for their cars. Insurance, real life issues, like they're going out and buying a bottle of alcohol. That's expensive, right? And so they're very mindful of the cost of stuff now, but we're never doing that until they had to start putting their hand in their own pocket. I don't know. How do you think, Paul? Because your kids are older.
Yeah. I mean, even going back to when I grew up, we had to, do jobs and earn pocket money. It wasn't given. So if we didn't do any chores, and I mean, some of it, we had a 1/4 acre block, and so mowing the lawn was actually quite a big job, for which I think got 20 cents for at the time. But, so I sort of grew up with a work ethic and also valuing, didn't have, lots of money growing up, so money was fairly tight at the time. So we, the big treat was a Friday night where we'd actually have fish and chips most Friday nights. Mum was also working full time, and there'd be maybe a bag of lollies that we'd share or something like that, and that was it. So I didn't grow up with tuck shop lunches and things like that. We took our lunches to school every day. And because of pocket money and things like that, occasionally we'd get on a Monday maybe something to buy, just a basic, winter pie from the school tuck shop, or some sort of sandwich or roll for lunch type thing. But other than that, I grew up not drinking fizzy drinks and things like that, which is, a healthy thing as well. So a lot of that's, kids these days certainly take for granted. They get given things. They don't have to work for what they've got, and they have high expectations and demands as well. I mean, to go, even for a kid to go to a movie theatre these days, under 18, I guess it's got to be close on $15 or something, I would guess, unless they go to a certain discount session.
I mean, kids don't have milk bars. It's closer to 7-Eleven, but we used to have milk bars, and for 5 cents you could get 10 raspberries, and it was, it was 5 cents or 10 cents, and it was a nice treat. And you might go with a grandparent or something, and you go to the local milk bar, and you'd have a little bit of pocket money, or and it was like we'd have once a week, it would be fish and chips, and it would be wrapped up in the newspaper. And then, a very special treat might be going to Chinese, because that was the only fast food available, in where I grew up. So, but these days, everything's online. We've got Uber, we've got everything. And, we saw that a lot through COVID, kids schooling at home, and they were just like, I know my kids were just Ubering their lunch. And even when they were at school, there was this thing in the media about, kids Ubering in their lunches because mum had made or dad had made their lunches, and they're not eating this shit. Like, they just get Uber and a pizza. They start saying you can't Uber into the school grounds at lunchtime. I mean, the accessibility these days to fast foods is so much easier, and also online shopping. And I think we've discussed this before. The problem is kids don't know the value of actually feeling money anymore because it's all electronic money. And I know my kids are noticing that. They go out to the bars and it's tap, 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 and all of a sudden, a couple of cocktails, it's overblown their budget for the evening. So, yeah, there's a lot in this, Paul, because as Paul just said, and I said before, it's the expectations of our kids and what they're expecting us to provide for them. It's almost this entitled little silver tray that they come through life with. What are your thoughts, other Paul?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, because you guys have both gone back to when you grew up, and you said, well, I know I grew up in a different country, in South Africa, and that was before apartheid. So they had apartheid at that time. So it was compared to Australia, it was quite a dangerous country. And I came to Australia when I was 12, so I know what happened before. I've got a line in the sand. And I remember before the age of 12, I was running around the streets of South Africa. There's no problems with regards to moving around freely, even although we lived in a very dangerous country. Nowadays, my boys are 10 and 11, and they've only just started to walk to school by themselves, and the school's literally across the road. Now, we've been overprotective of our children as compared to when you were younger. Now, were you more protective of your children? Paul?
Well, just going back to my experience, I grew up in country towns. So a population around 4,000. So even in primary school, generally we're riding a bike to school from maybe about year 3. Before that, I sort of can't recall how we're getting to and from school, but certainly from around then I was always riding a bike to and from school. I was separated and divorced when my kids themselves were growing up, so I didn't actually get to see that side of the schooling on a day-to-day basis, other than with my daughter. It was always, because of where I lived geographically, was picking her up after school and to have contact and access with her, and then dropping her back on the Monday type thing. So that was always done by car. But her mum used to drop her to school every day, even though there was a bus fairly close to where she lived. And this is even up right into high school. She was taking to and from school every day.
So
I do see kids younger that are taking trains during peak times to and from schools, and some quite distance away. Some come down from the Central Coast to go to the private schools in Sydney, and then head back for an afternoon. And while there's other kids with them, they seem to be sort of travelling solo type thing. So it takes, I guess, a fair bit of trust in your kids and knowing that they know the right things and what to do if there's a problem and things like that. But yeah, for a lot of parents that are so protective, they don't allow that space to actually happen.
Well, to be fair, Paul, I got 4 kids, and for a long time I had them at 3 different schools, and I was driving 4 to 6 hours a day. But like you, I was divorced or split up, and so that was my quality time with the kids, was in the car.
Yep.
So I made a conscious choice to drive them everywhere, because they were contained, and it was the only time I could get grunts or snorts, or I could use that time to do my lectures, right? And so I use that to my advantage, because when they come home from school, they're busy doing their homework or off doing sport or whatever. And I thought, this is my quality time with the kids, believe it or not. It's not sitting around the dinner table, because I just couldn't get them to talk. But in the car, we'd be talking about their day. They'd be sitting in there farting, doing all their bits and pieces, but they would be listening, and I would be talking about stuff. So, they're looking at the window, but they're listening. So I found that a really worthwhile environment to have quality time with the kids out of the whole week, because I didn't have them on the weekends. And so 4 to 6 hours a week. Ends up, I just had skin cancer cut off my nose from driving so much with the sun coming in. Oh, it looks as though I've bored these guys to tears because both falls are gone missing. Oh my goodness. No, you're back. So I think that is an interesting add-on, because my kids could have caught public transport, but I chose to drive them to have that quality time with them. Yeah, so I think that
I can see that
there.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And that's great that you're able to use that. I mean, a lot of parents, they would just drive their kids and they'd be letting them play with their iPhones, and it'd be the same as everywhere else. There wouldn't be that thing, but using it actually for connection and communication with them is really great. So, yeah, totally.
Don't get me wrong, they're still on their phones and whatever, but they were listening, right? And and I just might get grunts out. But I went through this phase of talking about one thing that they were grateful for, or, just not overwhelming them, but, and just talking. And, yeah, it's good. I mean, times have changed from when we grew up, and I do think parenting styles have changed enormously. So we talk to our kids, we ask our kids, we listen to our kids. I don't think when we grew up it was a strong part of parenting was to listen to kids. It was like telling your kids what to do and making sure that your manners were right and you sat up straight and you held your knife properly, and basic manners and things, but not that deeper level, how are you really feeling, particularly with mental health these days. The median age of anxiety is 15. So for kids, talking with kids and understanding and putting ourselves in their shoes, particularly through COVID and what they're experiencing, online bullying, all that sort of stuff, I think connection is really, really super important. But I think today's focus was about kids with money. Oh, Paul's coming back now. So
okay. It still says it's streaming, so I don't know what's happening.
Oh, don't worry. We're having a lovely chat.
Okay, well, we'll just keep going, and it looks like it's been going on to Facebook anyway, so I'll be able to edit it and chop it out.
Oh, okay. I'll give you an update. Sorry, go on.
Just started chatting away, and I don't know if it was me or not, and then I just realised that maybe it was my connection that's died.
Yeah, there's a lot of feedback coming through.
Can you get a lot of feedback?
Can you hear that, Paul?
I can't. But
that's probably the airplane flying over the top that's being picked up by the microphone. I apologise for that. I'm really close to the airport.
Right.
Yeah.
But just following on from what you were talking about before, Sally, in terms of kids and parents listening and things like that, I mean, kids do need boundaries and structures and guidance. They're not meant to have all the answers. And I'm not saying you did, but I've seen parents where they actually allow the kids so much freedom that that's where they get the entitlement and things from at times. They don't grow up knowing what the rules or the boundaries are. They're not disciplined, whether it's been granted or losing their, phone for a couple of hours until their behavior improves or something like that. And that can make a difference as well. So
coming back to Paul's point.
And kids thrive in a routine, and or particularly at younger ages as well, with having that routine and structure and discipline in the day.
So coming back to Paul's part about parenting.
I lost Paul again.
No, I'm here.
As adults parenting our children, and I started talking about entitlement, but also keeping up with the Joneses at school. It is hard, when it comes to runners. Do you know how expensive runners are for kids? And it doesn't always have to be the latest and greatest, but they want Nikes and they want, they're $230 or something. And so there is that part of not denying them, and they might have to cut a deal and work hard, but the cost of things, like, I don't know, it just wasn't as expensive back then, and we didn't have all this exposure to social media and the trend that was around. Like, of course we had trends, but it wasn't like it is today. I mean, Paul, have you gone through that with your boys yet, with runners? Brands?
Well, I don't buy the shoes, but my wife insists that they get good shoes. But my children go to a public school and not a private school, and I think there's probably a little bit more pressure on private schools to keep up with the Joneses. Although my kids are still 10 and 11, but Yeah, I suppose, my son had a birthday last week. He's turned 10. And he needed to have a party again. And they're going, well, parties are quite expensive.
Yep.
But I said, well, why don't you just have 2 or 3 friends and we can go to the movies? No, you had to have a full-on party. And so, we ended up having 18 boys playing nerve balls.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
And we did consent, and we didn't let him get away with it. But there's a part of me saying, you know what, I want him, because I'm such an introvert, I want him to have friends, and be friendly, and he's got a good personality. But I think my biggest query that's in the back of my mind is, if we've been too soft on our children now, are we giving them the tools in order to be able to go out and function firstly as adults, and then perhaps even beyond that? If you want the best for our children, we probably don't want our children just to have a mediocre job. We either want them to have a great profession or perhaps a great business. And are we giving them the tools to do that? What do you guys think? Paul?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually had a conversation with a friend pretty much on that issue. So she lives on a farm, has a farm property. Her son lives in a separate house on the farm as well, so he's effectively running the farm. But to some extent, because she's sort of had the control all the way through, he doesn't have a real concept of money or understanding. So, they end up with huge credit card bills against the business and the farm because he puts everything on there. He buys stuff that they possibly can't really afford or don't need. So she was talking to me about, separating out the finances more, and she's going to move away and off the farm probably anyway, and just be there occasionally. So he'll be running the farm in his own right as his own business type thing. And, I think for him it would be good. So it'll sort of separate and give him freedom and flexibility to learn lessons that he perhaps hasn't learned all the way. I mean, they were, working professionally. Her husband actually died a couple of years ago. So, since then it's been a bit hard for them. But, prior to that, they had, 2 incomes from both working other businesses, and the farm, once that was a hobby farm, but it was a passion that they wanted to do. And it's big enough to be a sustainable farm as well. But having that, closeness with the son being on the farm all the time, he hasn't become independent in some ways. Not saying that he's attached to the apron strings, but at times.
Let's drop that again.
Looks like Paul's dropped off again.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think us as parents being role models is really impactful on kids. What they see both parents doing, whether together or not apart, their attitude towards, making ends meet, how to survive and how to pay the bills and that sort of thing. Sitting back, we don't act entitled. So our kids are going to see that we put in effort, that we do try, that we work hard, and that we're very conscious of our spending. As I know other parents that just the cash, it's just dish the cash out, because I think making kids independent once they have to start paying for themselves, I think get them to fail fast, and realise how expensive it is to live, and how paying taxes, my kids are going, oh my God, but I've got to pay tax. And it's like, oh my gosh. And, they're 18, 19 and just going, wow, man. And I said, yeah, well, welcome to the real world. So, when they find that power, that passion and fire in the belly for whatever they're doing, I think that's all that they need to do, is find that why, because one of my first jobs was working in broking. I think I was 13 and I was stamping prospectuses, and I was doing that 9 to 5, 5 days a week with 1 hour off for lunch. And that shaped my life, because I thought, nowhere in my lifetime do I want to commit to stamping prospectuses as a job for my life. I was watching the clock, and it was only school holidays, so it might be 2-3 weeks at a time. I'm thinking, oh my God, the most boring job in the world. So, that actually fine for me, and getting very small pay for it. I thought, no, I want to do something bigger than that. So I was driven by my experience. So, yeah. Have you ever stamped prospectuses, Paul? Oh, you've muted.
So no, I've never done that, but I have had boring jobs. But it does beg the question, right? When your children get to an age, is it a good thing for them to go and work at McDonald's and to actually learn?
I'm 100% for it. Yeah.
Paul? No, he's frozen again.
Yeah, I like Sally's idea about let them fail and fail fast. The lessons learnt are the best lessons in life, providing they're not going to get in too deep. But just getting that bit of exposure, how to manage money, things like that are really important life skills. Another friend of mine was actually wanting to bring some sort of financial literacy into schools, because it's something that isn't really taught, how to manage money. Sort of economics and commerce was a separate subject that not very many people actually went on and did. So I did it in years 11 and 12, but it was such a small class that actually did it. So, the normal maths and things doesn't help to understand how the business world works and what happens in other areas of the economy. But she was wanting to make it sort of just a practical, and I guess, it didn't actually proceed, but the concept and the idea behind it was really good. And it's something that I think is still missing in schools. And parents often don't recognise it, or maybe don't see a need, and they think, they're going to learn everything they need at school. But a lot of the stuff at school doesn't actually set you up for life or learning.
No, life.
I was
going to say, one of the best examples I can think of is that movie To Serve With Love, where he actually threw the curriculum out the window and said, we've got such limited time. This is what you're going to need to survive after school. And the real, application of life. And you know what? Schools still haven't caught up and still haven't done it. And that movie's got to be 50 years old or something like that now.
Yeah. Groovy. So,
Okay, so look, we've had a lot of problems with the internet and all that, and I don't even know if I'm on, because I can see Sally being highlighted. So we might still have problems. No, that's okay. I'm talking. It's the.
You can keep talking. I can just jump off if you guys want to keep talking.
No, that's okay. Yeah. So I was just going to say, look, thank you for your time today. It was a very interesting discussion, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you, guys, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Right. Okay.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Sally. Okay. See you, Paul.